Hello, and welcome back to the Fae Banner Review, where we talk about Fae doing Fae things as usual. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'll let you decide. Today, we have a brand new ninja banner featuring recognizable characters such as character released in Book 9 and other character released in Book 9. And other characters released in Book 8, and as per tradition, I will be using this coveted line graph that may or may not be a line graph at the end of the day to rank the brand new ninja banner, as well as the circle graph that may or may not be a circle at the end of the day alongside it. Today's rankings will be based on how many effects the units share across their kits, and if you want to kit out your YouTube feed with more awesome content, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you, I'd really appreciate it. First up, we have female Chez, and she's a blue dagger infantry unit this time around, which is fairly unique as she's already been that in the past. Because it's Chez, she's probably going to do something cool like be effective against everything, which would be fairly unique as she's already had that effect in the past. But hey, she looks pretty cool at least. Which is fairly unique as she's always been very cool. Let's see, Chez comes with Covert Duality, which is a slaying player phase brave dagger that inflicts -7 speed and defense, sabotage, and exposure on the closest foes and any foe within 2 spaces at the start of the turn, and after she takes an action, she gets a bunch of stats during combat, bonus neutralization during combat, upwards of 25 true damage and 15 true damage reduction based on the amount of bonuses she has, and that's it. In an unexpected twist of Fire Emblem fate, we have the first readable PRF weapon of 2025. I am so proud. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled unreadable skills. Chez also comes with a PRFA slot in a Rapid Slice that grants the 50% damage reduction piercing status and Hexblade to herself and allies within 2 spaces at the start of the player phase and enemy phase. She gets an additional Spectrum 9 during combat, 40% pierceable damage reduction, 7 true damage reduction, full no follow-up, and effectiveness against any non-dragon and non-beast infantry foe if she has 20 or more speed over the foe, or 5 speed against infantry dragons and beasts. Whoa, it's Chez. Again. She has effective damage, she can hit hard sometimes, and yeah, that's definitely what she does. There's not a whole lot else to her that's really changed besides being able to hit harder and having a bit better utility. She does seem to have better survivability, what with the extra true damage reduction and pierceable amount in her A slot, so she may not explode on contact at least. Those two effects together really do add up to a lot of bulk. She'll probably do well enough at dealing damage, but the lack of range does sting a bit. The presence of the Corin ring doesn't help either, since she'll most likely have to be on a vert terrain to get a combat going, which means she'll probably not be able to get out after. It is a fixable issue, but it does stand out. At least more than the thing she's been doing over and over again. But besides that, I don't really know what else there is to say about her. It's just Chez, again. Chez also comes with Comet, Full Disarm, and a brand new C slot in Lookout Smog that grants flat Canto 2, the distance swap effect when Canto goes off, 4 attack and speed during combat, 7 true damage reduction, and inflicts Scowl on the foe's first attack if the foe's attack can trigger a special. It's cool, yeah. I'm surprised they haven't made more of these throughout Book 9, but I can't say I blame them. They're somewhat niche C-slots to begin with, and this isn't any exception. Lookout Smog is decent enough. Nothing crazy, but it's far from bad, and there's nothing else to say about it. And other than that, that sure is Chez. She looks decent enough, but she doesn't really seem to have anything that makes her stand out. Comet with her effectiveness against everything does have a lot of damage scaling potential at least, but her range definitely leaves a lot to be desired. She's definitely far from unusable, but the latter definitely sticks out. We aren't short on player phase options that can reach much more easily, even with less damage output anyway. And speaking of which, next there's Yunaka, and she's a red bow infantry this time around. It's a bit of a departure from her previous 2 versions, but at least it's something unique, which is pretty cool. That's the last thing I could say about her playstyle though. Let's see, Yunaka comes with Bow of Stealth, which is a slaying dual phase brave bow that inflicts Discord, Speed Shackle, and Defense Shackle on the closest foes and any foe within 2 spaces at the start of the turn, and after she takes an action, she gets a bunch of stats during combat, upwards of 25 true damage and 15 true damage reduction based on the amount of bonuses she has, and Null Guard. Yunaka also comes with a PRFA slot in Ninja Zap that grants breath and dodge to herself and allies allies at the start of the player phase and enemy phase, has built-in pass, grants a weapon triangle advantage against colorless foes, and inflicts a weapon triangle disadvantage on them during combat. She can warp to any space within 2 spaces of a space within 2 spaces of space, whatever base Yunaka did, basically. My brain hurts. She gets an additional Spectrum 9 during combat, 7 to 15 extra true damage and true damage reduction, and 50% damage reduction piercing. Yep, that's Yunaka, but new. Yunuka here! This is going to be the trend of the entire banner, isn't it? It's pretty much just base Yunaka, but she's a bow who could hit harder with slightly better utility, which is fine enough. She does seem to have better survivability, what with the extra true damage reduction and pierceable amount in her A slot, so she may not explode on contact at least. Those two effects together really do add up to a lot of bulk. This is giving me serious deja vu. I actually think they may have made one unit and split it across most of the units on the banner, which is driving me insane. Chez being Chez again, Yunaka being Yunaka again, etc, etc. But hey, I guess if it ain't broke, then it doesn't need fixing, right? It probably needs fixing. I do not believe for a second Yunaka is beating Ayduldoro in practice. Yunaka also comes with Arc Rival, Odd Speed Wave 4, and Speed Defense Lull Finish, which isn't too bad. Arc Rival can be passed around to a bunch of units, and it's pretty good since it has Brave damage reduction with basically no check, as well as Guard. You could probably find a good amount of use cases for that. And Odd Speed Wave as well as Speed and Defense Lull Finish. You probably couldn't find a good amount of use cases for those. Lull Finish is fine enough, what with the 15 true damage per hit, and the lull, and the finish, and the other stuff it does. We're just not short on infantry B slots at the moment. Not to mention it has to compete with the likes of, you know what? I take it back. It's good enough, yeah. And other than that, that sure is Yunaka. Honestly, she seems okay, but I'm not sure to what degree. I think she's going to end up folding to Ayduldoro a lot of the time, despite what the trailer shows, because the weapon triangle has not mattered for the past few years. She's basically just a newer Yunaka who isn't even that old, and that makes me feel old. At worst, she's still a unit with 6 range and can probably do decent enough work with the right units. All 2 very specific units, but it would work maybe, probably, yeah.
Yunaka here!
And then we have Hrid, and he's the demote this time around. Last year, we didn't have a demote, which was weird because I'm pretty sure it's the only time they didn't do that for a ninja banner. But just like the last ninja banner, everyone on the banner has a PRF, which means Hrid won't instantly be banished to the instantly bad dimension. Let's see. Hrid comes with Glacial Great Axe, which is a slaying dual-phase brave axe that inflicts -5 attack speed, defense, and res, bonus neutralization, and the 50% damage reduction piercing effect on foes within 3 rows and columns of Hrid. He gets a bunch of stats during combat, upwards of 25 true damage and 15 true damage reduction based on the amount of bonuses he has, follow-up denial, and he restores 7 HP to himself when he attacks. He also comes with a PRF B slot and Glacial Seal that grants cancel remaining +1 minimum of 2. It inflicts -7 attack and defense, frozen, and defense shackle on the closest foes and any foe within 2 spaces at the start of the player phase and enemy phase. He inflicts an additional -5 attack speed and defense on the foe during combat, gets a guaranteed follow-up attack, 20% defense-based true damage and true damage reduction, and at the start of the enemy phase, after start of turn healing and damage goes off, he inflicts Divine Vein Ice on the nearest foe with the lowest defense for 1 turn, as long as there isn't any Divine Vein Ice currently applied by any other unit or ally. Okay, this is actually something new. I think he is really, really strong, and not even by demote standards. He actually offers so much as a unit that it's really hard to know where to begin with him. The main thing that really stood out was his ice terrain, since he just inflicts it on the nearest foe. It says it's a defense check, but that only applies if multiple foes meet the closest condition, so you really do have more flexibility with it than it may seem. That has the potential to be really strong defensively anywhere in the game. One of the easiest applications for this would be for Aetheraide's offense, where you could just lock a unit in place with it. That is incredibly useful to have at your disposal. Moreover, it can be paired with the Corn Ring on offense, since they are different forms of ice veins. There's no overlap, and it just means being more safe. You can also be really obnoxious with it and put him on an Aetheraide's defense so the foe has to fight his ice and Corrin's ice. please don't do that. That aside, the extra frozen support and other effects alongside it make him really nice for a lot of the game's content in general. I kinda wish he was able to inflict his penalties after taking an action as well. Most of the debuffs can be cleansed by fairly common units, but I can't really complain. His support is already a lot as is. And as for his own combat, he still has a lot of the standard true damage reduction stuff, but Brave on top of that means he could possibly do a lot more than just support. He has access to enough tools that let him act as a 6 range unit thanks to extra movement buffs and the range 2 style bonus. I don't think he'll be super crazy combatively, but it's a lot more than other supports in the game, and the fact that he has the option to do so is great. I genuinely have nothing bad to say about this unit. I could say a lot of bad things about some other units if you guys want. Grid also comes with Ignis in a brand new, kinda sorta new, A-slot in Shatterproof, which is crystalline water but attack and defense, and it definitely feels kinda late at this point. It's not a terrible skill, but I don't think there's a lot of units that would really consider using something like this. It's not like Crystalline where we have a bunch of skills that check visible res. Visible defense isn't as utilized for the most part. Unless you're a momentum man, in which case... Override. And other than that, that sure is Grid. Grid really does so much on the support side of things that I'm shocked they even made him a demote. Ice Terrain Infliction, Frozen, Shackle, Stat Swings, Dull, 50% damage reduction piercing. And that's not even including anything you could give him in this C slot. Not to mention he could probably pack a decent enough punch as a combat unit. I have no problem saying he's the best unit on the banner. We're not even done with it yet. And speaking of the banner, and last on the banner, we have Gullveig and Kvasir, and they're the duo this time around. Although this wouldn't be the first time, seeing as we had a duo Gullveig last year on the summer banner. And on the New Year's banner, because Sather is also Gullveig, as well as Kvasir, who is both Sather and Gullveig. Fae lore is really weird. Let's see. Gullveig comes with Scrolls of Time, which is a slaying player phase brave colorless tome that grants Time's Gate, Preempt Pulse, and Anathema to herself and allies within 2 spaces at the start of the turn. Grants pass after she's entered combat on the same turn. She gets a bunch of stats during combat, upwards of 25 true damage and 15 true damage reduction based on the amount of bonuses she has, and Gale Force after initiating combat. Gullveig also comes with a PRF special in the True Future and the True Past, and this joke does not work because I don't have enough space in the text box. It's a 4 cooldown special that boosts her damage by 80% of her speed stat, nullifies guard, grants upwards of 60% special damage reduction based on the amount of allies with the Time's Grip status when initiating combat, and a second Gale Force if her special goes off and she survives the combat, on top of a dual button that has an effect the likes you've never seen before. It grants Gale Force and restores 40 HP to herself. Ain't that something special? So yeah, she's Gullveig and she does Gullveig things, aka Gale Force and Gale Force and Gale Force and Gale Force. It's pretty much just base Gullveig, but she can hit harder with slightly better utility, which is fine enough. She does seem to have better survivability, what with the extra true damage reduction and pierceable amount in her special, so she may not explode on contact at least. Those two effects together really do add up to a lot of bulk. Faye, please, I am begging you, have some creativity on the next banner. But yeah, she can hit 4 times during combat, or at least try to, because it's hard to say whether or not she could deal with far saves that well in practice. I'm sure she'll be fine, but I can't help but have my worries. Worst case scenario, she just won't be your primary initiator and can be used as a cleanup unit, which is still useful, especially with 4 actions to make use of. There's plenty of stuff you could do with that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gullveig also comes with a bunch of inheritable skills, including Sly Swift Sparrow, Attack Speed Assault Hone, and a brand new, kinda sorta new B slot in Conjuring Breath, which inflicts 7 damage on the foe at the start of combat, has built-in Fatal Smoke, inflicts -4 speed and res on the foe during combat, 20% true damage based on the higher of speed or res, 7 first hit true damage reduction, and breath. I kinda like it. It's mostly the Fatal Smoke aspect that's doing it for me, but I could get behind a skill like this. It still has the standard true damage reduction stuff that every skill has these days, and you know, breath is still pretty good sometimes. The choice of speed and res is pretty great too, since they do release units that are more res leaning than speed leaning sometimes. It's just another option mostly, and I wouldn't say no to that. Well, I would have if mages didn't lack B slots. They really do need all the help they can get. And other than that, that sure is Gullveig and Kvasir. Honestly, she's far from bad, even if she is a tad repetitive at this point. I think she could be useful if you're in need of someone to make Aether's offense a bit easier given the 4 Gale Forces and whatnot. That said, she's also not someone you really need to get if you're struggling with that. There's plenty of alternative units you could use for player phase strategies. All of which that aren't on any banners currently, but still. Well, there's other stuff you could do besides player phase, like enemy phase, since we have plenty of options for those too. all of which that aren't on any banners currently, but still. And then there's the free stuff, and who doesn't like free stuff? This time around, we have male Chez, who sure is a grail Chez. Again. Honestly, the moment I saw him in the trailer, I immediately thought he was going to get a PRF again, and maybe I was a bit too confident in thinking that. Another Chez. Well, you know what that means? He has a PRF again, probably. I'm telling you right now, mark my words. Mark my words right now. He also gets a PRF because it's Chez. And Chez is cool. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Chez is really cool. I like him. But it would never have happened.
You guys know
it would
if
not
you
have
have a pass, you can get a free spark.
It would not have happened. I'm telling you right now. It would not have happened to any other character. It's specifically because it's Chez. I'm telling you right now. And it's probably going to be the exact same thing as this. Oops. But hey, the weapon is really great, honestly. It's a dual-phase Brave Axe that grants some extra stats, 15 true damage, 10 true damage reduction, and 7 HP when attacking. It's a really easy weapon to pass around to basically any axe unit, given everything just works off an HP condition. It doesn't have anything tied to speed despite Chez's stat line. I'll gladly take great accessible inheritables any day. I said great, not whatever attack speed solo is. We also have the Sacred Seals and Panic Smoke and Chill Attack Speed, which are pretty decent seals, honestly. Null Panic is a pretty common bonus currently, but it's an okay filler penalty that can be tossed around to any initiator here and there. It's not the strongest, but it's fine enough. And Chill Attack Speed is equally kind of filler, but it's far from bad. It's just one of those things you could pass around to a unit that doesn't really need many other seals. And overall, the free stuff this time around is pretty solid. Despite Chez not having a PRF of his own, there's still something you could take away from him. His weapon. You should just build Grimmel instead.
Grimmel.
And now that we've gone over the brand new ninja units, I think it's time we rank the banner on the line graph that may or may not be a line graph at the end of the day. And would you look at that? The brand new ninja banner has earned a 5 out of 10 on the line graph. And based on my understanding of the banner, I believe that it would be best fit somewhere around this area of the circle graph. It doesn't seem to be that great of a banner, but maybe there's something you could salvage out of it. Just kidding, salvages on the other banner. And you may be wondering to yourself, is this banner the banner that ever bannered? And while I have no way of fully addressing that question head on, I can at least tell you if you should spend orbs on it. You probably shouldn't spend orbs on it. I usually expect ninja banners to be really strong, but I don't think it's doing it for me this year outside of Hrid. Hrid is looking to not only be the strongest unit here, but also really useful across a lot of the game. Inflicting ice terrain on closest foes has a lot of potential to be really strong defensively, and it's not taking any of his other support into account. That, and for being a demote, I could easily encourage people to grab him since it is cheap to do, but that's really about all I could recommend from the banner. Chez looks okay, but I'm not terribly convinced she's worth grabbing unless you really like her. I don't think she'll be awful in practice, especially with the effective damage and whatnot, but she doesn't do anything particularly amazing in my eyes. Yunaka is more or less the same thing to me, except she does have the same 6 range stuff that her base version has. She's basically just a stronger version of her, and that does have its merits for what it's worth, but I also don't think you'll be missing out on much if you don't get a copy. And Golvig, I think, is pretty decent overall, actually. The amount of Gale Forces she has can be pretty useful in a Balder and Hother dominated landscape, but I also don't think she'll be your primary nuke. She's definitely a solid cleanup unit for Aether's offense, but that's the extent of her usefulness, honestly. And really, the banner is surprisingly skippable overall. It's not outright terrible, but there's nothing that's really worth going out of your way for except Hrid, and even then, that really shouldn't be hard to do since he's a demote. That said, it's not like there's a lot else to summon on at the moment. The Halloween banner and the Entwined Sharena banner are going away by the time the Ninja banner goes up, so unless you want to do some last minute summoning, you can kind of just ignore them at this point. The Heimdallr banner is still up, and it is really good overall. It has Balder and Hother, both of which are incredibly important for Aether's defense. And Heimdallr herself is really strong. Otherwise, we'll have the new Heroes banner sooner or later this month, and it's going to have a new Arcane Dragonstone with Vanitas. It's pretty decent since it has built-in barricade and whatnot, so I'd wait for that if you're in need of updating a dragon unit. But if none of that stuff interests you, then I would just save your orbs. We'll probably have way stronger stuff within a month that's more worthwhile to summon for, TBH, 2BH, to be quite H. Maybe I would have been more convinced that the PRFs were 10 paragraphs long in 1-point font.